have to be finished by now. Okay, we're learning the Maimer Kumi Oiri, Kiva Oirech, which is a Maimer that the Rebbe said in Tafshin Lamed Gimel. And it was said in honor of Chayel, on the occasion of Chayel, which is the birthday of the Alter Rebbe and of the Baal Shem Tov, Shnei Ma'aris HaGedolim. And today, Mitzvah Hashem, we will complete the Maimer. We are holding Ois Zion. So, in the Maimer until now, the Rebbe discussed the Frierdiker Rebbe's Maimer on the pasuk Ki imcha meker chayim ba'er chenira. And the Rebbe discussed the idea, the concept of just how high is a Yid, just how great, what's the true greatness of a Yid. I don't even know a Yid, the greatness of a Yid is so immense that I don't know if we could ever say that we understand the true greatness of a Yid, but we get a glimpse into the greatness of a Yid. And without getting into the details, but at least to try to give us a little bit of an idea of what we learned earlier. So if we were to try to imagine what is vastness, what is something that's immense, expansive, without an end really. So the only ways that we can start to try to grasp it in our mind in a way that we can understand, in a way that's meaningful to us, not just the words on a paper, not just math. So we could try to imagine the vastness of the planet, the vastness of planet Earth, yeah. Or we could even start with the room. Inside the room, you have a small speck of dust, of which you have millions floating in the room, especially in New York City. You have an extra dose of dust. You know, when we go to the country, so you come there after a whole year, and you walk into the bungalow, and you open up, and there's no dust. Everything is clean. Everything is just the way you left it. You know, you can run your finger on the countertop, you pick it up, you see there's no dust. You know, over here in the city, after a few days, you know, it's full of dust.
Because the trees are absorbing that probably.
Yeah, because there's less people, but pastors place. I
I think most dust
comes from people.
That skin.
Yeah, that's what I heard. So we have so many from dead skin, Pashut.
From what?
From skin, from the skin. The skin is constantly renewing itself. Let's say it in a nicer way. It's not from dead skin. It's constantly renewing itself. So the older parts of the skin fall off. So a small piece of dust floating around over here in the room. You can't even see it. That's how small it is compared to the room. If you wanted to make a chair, create a chair, you would have to collect so many of these small pieces of dust that it would take you probably, I don't know what, tens of years until you have enough of those small little pieces of dust, you know, to have enough material to make something that resembles a chair. It's mamish nothing. It's insignificant, right? And if you take all of us sitting in this room over here and compare that to the size of the whole planet, and you know, in other words, you have the mountain ranges, the continents, and the oceans, it's the whole planet, and then that's nothing compared to the size of the solar system. Okay, maybe it's not like a piece of dust, but it's nothing. Could you imagine how insignificant one piece of dust in this room is to the solar system? And the solar system is insignificant and probably actually like the size of a piece of dust in the galaxy. And this is one galaxy. You take the galaxy and try to view it in within the frame of the entire universe, it's even smaller than a piece of dust. It's even smaller than what a piece of dust is to this room. The Eibishter made the universe so great, so immense, that we can't even see the end of it. It's not infinity because it's a creation.
Yeah,
It's a physical creation, and something that has a beginning has an end. So we know from Torah that it's not infinite, but it absolutely looks infinite. It looks infinite. The more sophisticated instruments that are developed, the deeper they can look into the history of the universe and into the vast distances. They could see light that of course, we know it all started in Sheishis Yemei Bereishis, but the Pashtus, the way the Eibishter created it, was as if it was of a certain age. Just like when the Eibishter created Adam Rishon, he didn't create him an infant. The Rebbe mentions this in a letter, that this could possibly be one of the answers. In other words, we don't need an answer. We know that what the Torah says is true. If we look and observe at the universe and examine it, it seems to us that it's older. So a possible answer is just like the Eibishter created Adam Rishon at a certain age, so the entire universe was created at a certain age. But when you look at it and they could see light that's coming that would have taken, I don't know how far they're able to see already, but certainly in the millions of light years away, I believe. in the millions of light years away. And the light year means, in other words, if in a second light travels 360,000 miles, I think in 1 second. So saying a million light years means a distance of how long it would take light, which travels at 360,000 miles a second, how long it would take it to travel over the course of a million years. Imagine that distance. So we're dealing over here with levels of massiveness that we bechlal, even though we can talk about it and we can sort of try to picture it, it's hard for us to grasp. And that's all just this physical world. That's all just this physical world. The lowest of the spiritual worlds, in other words, Elam Ha'asiyah Haruchnis, is infinitely greater than the entire universe. In other words, the entire universe isn't even like a speck of dust in Elam Ha'asiyah Haruchnis. And Lagabe Elam Ha'yitzirah, Asiyah is nothing. And Lagabe Briya Yitzirah is nothing. Lagabe Atzilus Briya is nothing. And this is all within the Malik Kolamin. Higher than all that is Seviv Kolamin. Higher than all that is the Eid HaKolol Batzmusay. And higher than all that is Shmai. So these are ideas that people spend their life, that Hasidim spend their life learning about in all of the Hasidus, in all of the Longam Sheikhim, and Samach Vav, and Anayin Beis, and in the Middle Rebbe's Hasidus. And they try to give us some sort of an idea of the Ilm Yenim. And you hear the stories about the Malachim and the Heichalis, the holy chambers, and Aliyas, the Habal Shem Tov, to the Heichal of Mashiach. All of these descriptions of this greatness that is just so beyond us. And what does he say? That what's greater than all of that? What's greater than all of that? Because everything that we said is really included, either in the Malikul Almin or in Seviv, or if you want to say no Hakol Batzmusay, or in Shmai, which is even higher than Hakol Batzmusay. What's even greater than all that? Hashem, of course. But what is it from the things that Hashem made? What is it that's the closest to Hashem? That's the closest to Hashem. What is it? So he says Torah. Torah is even higher than everything that we just mentioned, and in an incomparable way. You cannot compare the whole greatness of the whole universe and all of the spiritual worlds and the thing and the spiritual lights and all of the chambers and the angels. You can't compare their greatness to the greatness of Torah. Torah is even greater than that in perhaps what you could call an infinitely greater way. And what's even greater than all that, explains the Rebbe in this Maimer, greater than all that is a Yid. Greater than Torah is what? Is a Yid. And that's the explanation of the pasuk in the Frierdiker Rebbe's Maimer. But Chayim, life, he mentions four things in the pasuk. Chayim, life, is the Eid HaMamalik Kol Almin. Mekir Chayim is the Eid HaSeviv Kol Almin. Orech is already higher than any Eid, that's already Torah. And Nida Eid, Ba'ercha Nida Eid is Yidden. So, and then he explains, however, how does it work though? When a Yid, who's this highest thing that can possibly exist, because it's the closest thing that can ever be to Hashem, when Hashem put a Yid into this world, Hashem put a Yid into this world in a way that it's a separate being, that's a separate entity. In other words, Hashem took a piece of himself, Kivyachol separated it from himself, and put it into this world. Let's take a simple example from something that women are more familiar with, but we also see our wives do it sometimes. The mitzvah of Afrashas Challah. Afrashas Challah is what? You take a piece, and we have it in Rambam recently in the past couple of days. So you take a piece of challah, you take a piece of the dough, and you detach it, you separate it. And that you give to the Kohen. Mitzvah will be able to do the mitzvah with Mashiach before this Rosh Hashanah, today yet. So, right, when Mashiach comes, we're gonna run to find the mitzvahs that we could do. So we'll raid our cabinets, take out the flour, make up a dough so we could do the mitzvah. We haven't been able to do it. I think it's. First of all, we'll be in Eretz Yisrael. This one will be in Eretz Yisrael. Derabanan l'chura, over here it's derabanan l'chura. L'chura over here it's derabanan. The question is because it's chutzlart or it's because it's not as manabayis. We learned this just a few days ago now, but I forgot already. I'll call upon him. So you take a piece of the challah, you take a piece of the dough off of the dough. What do you have? It's the same dough. It's the same thing. It's not anything different, but it's separate. Al derech zeh, it's a very primitive muscle, but al derech zeh, A Yid, Hashem took a piece of himself and put him into this world. So mitzad echad, we say that it's the highest thing in the world. Why? Because Hashem took a piece of himself. But mitzad sheni, the fact that he's a part of the Eibishter is hidden. Because the Eibishter Kivyochel separated himself, separated the Yid, and turned him into an individual creation, into a neshama. So it's a separate thing. Torah, even though it's lower, Torah we can't say Kilu is mamash, a part of Hashem. Torah we can't say that, so it's lower than a Yid. However, when Hashem put it into the world, he put it into the world not as a separate thing. He put it into the world as something that's always connected to him. What's Torah? Torah is the will of Hashem. The will of somebody's connected to him. It's not separate from him. Torah is the wisdom of the Eibster. The wisdom of a person is connected to him. It doesn't look like a separate thing. You don't say Hashem and his will and his wisdom are three separate things. You look at Torah, you see that this is Hashem. What does it say in Torah? Vayidaber Hashem. Hashem spoke. You should do all of my mitzvahs. Torah, you see in a very revealed way, is connected to Hashem. A Yid is a human being. The way Hashem put him into this world is a human being. He could either live his life connected to Hashem, or chas v'shalom in a revealed way, he could seem disconnected from Hashem. So unlike Torah, where whenever you look at Torah, you see Hashem, you look at a Yid, not necessarily do you see Hashem. And even a Yid who does everything that Hashem wants, but you look at him and you say, this is what he does, but what is he? What does he appear to be? He appears to be a separate thing from Hashem. However, in truth, what's the truth of a Yid? That he is actually a part of Hashem. And he's closer to Hashem than really Torah, but this is all hidden. So that's why a Yid has to learn Torah, because Torah, which is in a revealed way connected to Hashem, reveals the truth of the Yid. Torah, which has its connection to Hashem, even in this world, shines a light on the Yid and brings out his inner truth, that what is he really? He is really just a piece of Hashem, just a part of Hashem, even though he was put into this world as a separate thing. That's what we learned until now in the Maimer. Now, in the completion of the Maimer, the Rebbe says something astounding. Just recall once we verbringed upstairs over here, when we're discussing that the greatest thing that there is the guf of a Yid.
This is what?
The guf of a Yid.
The group of it.
The body of a Yid. In other words, when we say a Yid and we talk about the greatness of a Yid, so what do we tend to think? I know, ich weiß was. I know Yehuda, he's in Shul. I know him, I see him. He's a nasty guy. He's also a lo yutzlach. And there's not a lot to like about him. Norfos, he has a neshama. He has a neshama. So therefore, I treasure him. He's precious to me. I care for him. I love him. And I know that hidden somewhere deep in there, because of his neshama, he's truly greatness, and the Baal Shem Tov would see his greatness, and he would bring out his greatness. But we're talking all, not Mitzad Yehuda. We're talking about Mitzad Yehuda's neshama. That's the wrong understanding completely. The goof of a Yid, the body of a Yid, the physical human Yid that's sitting right in front of you, no matter what he looks like, no matter who he is and how he is, because of he himself, because of his body, because of his physical existence, that is the greatest thing that exists in the world. Just the body of a Yid, the human being of a Yid, so to speak. That is the greatest thing that is in the world, and that's what the Rebbe is going to discuss over here in the Maimer. Why do we say that the body of a Yid is even greater than the neshama of a Yid? Right? If you'll come, like I mentioned before by the Fabrengen, we were saying that what's more treasured by the Yid, what's more by the Eibishter, what's more precious by the Eibishter is the Yid's body, not his neshama. His neshama may be in a madregas. If you want to talk about levels of greatness, so you can say, fine, the neshama is in a great level, the body is in a lowly level. But if you talk about what is the body itself and what is the neshama itself, what the body itself is something that's even greater than the neshama. And therefore, the importance of doing pashut mitzvahs, mitzvahs ma'asiyos, is the highest. It's even greater than the importance of the kavanah in the mitzvahs. But that's a separate discussion for a different time, because we do have to have the kavanah in the mitzvahs. We do have to serve Hashem with whatever measure of love and fear we can awaken within ourselves. But if we find ourselves in a time, in a generation that we live in, which is the time that we live in today, where it's very hard for us to work up a love of the Eibishter in our heart, it's very hard for us to work up a fear of the Eibishter in our heart. And all we can do is just the physical mitzvahs. We say, Hashem said, put on tefillin. I know that come what may, in the morning I'll be in Shul, I'll be putting on tefillin. I'll be giving tzedakah.
to work up a fair, so we intrinsically believe in schar v'einish. So we know that if we're not in Shul tomorrow to put on tefillin, deep down inside we fear that Hashem is going to punish us.
Really? I don't.
What makes you go to Shul in the morning?
I'm not sure.
It's not fair.
Not fair.
And not, it's not fair.
Look, what you said.
That's already a super high down.
Look, what you're saying. The Rebbe Rashab said that people who say that they're going to do Tena mitzvahs because the Eibster wants, and they're not impressed by this whole thing of schar v'einish, so at the end of the day they're going to end up sinning. They're going to end up doing avedas. But I'm saying it because that's what the Rebbe Rashab said.
No, but I'm saying
I don't feel.
I'm saying not that.
Maybe I'm
the
different.
reason why you do something on a most basic level is because you fear retribution from Hashem, and you have to work yourself up into levels of ahava. But bottom line, you're afraid of Hashem. That's what you were taught from childhood, and that's what's inside of you.
I wish I could say it. You stand on a higher level if you have this.
It's not a high level. It's a very even a person.
I'm not saying Hashem. I don't fear Hashem. I do fear Hashem. But if I miss a Shabbos,
even people that don't have the religion in their lives, they say that. Even people that don't have religion in their lives, they say that.
Okay. Alan Dershowitz grew up in a frum home in Crown Heights. No,
Yeah.
I thought he grew up in Flatbush.
No, whatever.
But either way,
he
right?
grew up in a from home.
Either way, right around here. So, he gave an interview with Yossi Jacobson. So Alan Dershowitz tells Yossi Jacobson that he knows for sure he's an atheist. He's an absolute and complete atheist. He's a very warm Yid. He loves Yidden and Yiddishkeit, Eretz Yisrael. He defends Eretz Yisrael. He's one of the greatest defenders of Eretz Yisrael. He's the one who won the court case for the Rebbe when to get to Menorahs, public menorah lighting. Very warm Yid, but he says he's sure he doesn't believe in Hashem. Why is he sure he doesn't believe in Hashem? He says he was once on a plane, and the pilot gets on the intercom, the speaker, and he says, "Ladies and gentlemen, there's serious engine issues. We're not sure we're going to make it." So he says, "We're not sure we're going to make it." And he says, everybody says there's no atheists in the trench, right? In the trenches, there's no atheists. He says everybody was davening. The Yidden in the proper way, the Goyim in the improper way, they all davening. He says, I was not davening. I took out a pen and paper. I wrote down my thoughts and my notes and my goodbyes and my love to my wife, to my children. I wasn't davening. He said, he'll put it in his pocket. They'll find his body. They'll take out the paper. They'll see a message to his kids. It was the day before cell phones. So he says, in the end, the plane landed, Baruch Hashem, he was alive, but he had one revelation. He does not believe in the Eivishter. Hold on. My da'ani, he says every morning. My da'ani, he says every morning.
I don't know.
So Hashem, you're an atheist.
I don't know if that's that Paul Green.
I don't remember. So
I don't know if that's.
He definitely believes in the Eivishter. He says my da'ani. But I don't know. Let's grant to you what you're saying. That on some level we do have a fear of the Eibishter. Let me ask you something. If a person, Chas v'Shalom, goes to the doctor, nobody in this room, no Yid, he goes to the doctor, and the doctor tells him, listen, I sense something, I hear something, there's something wrong, it might be a growth. We're going to send the person in for pictures to see what's going on there. The appointment is in 2 days from now, because tomorrow is Sunday, the imaging place is closed, and I want you to go specific to this doctor. He's a very good doctor. I don't want to send you to some new guy. The person has a fear for the next 3 days. That is fear. That is fear. Okay? Let me know. This is the fear of Hashem that I'm talking about. The fear of Einish is not exactly, is nicht Punkt. Again, the Rebbe Rashab said you have to have a fear of Einish, so because the Rebbe Rashab said, so I tried to have a fear of Einish as much as I could. But if Chas v'Shalom, that person who got that news, he's in fear. If somebody is in a bad mood, because he's struggling to pay his bills or whatever it is. Yeah, let's use the example of financials. He's struggling to pay his bills. And he's sitting over there and he's thinking to himself. He learns Shara B'tachin and he knows it well, and he meditates upon it. And he is sure that Hashem will give him everything he needs, and he works up an excitement and a happiness within him, even though he was in a miserable mood for the past 3 days, because the mortgage is due and the tuition is due and Ichves Vasnach is due. And he's embarrassed to walk down the street to see his friend from whom he took a loan and can't pay it back. Yeah? And he learns Shara B'tachin, and it lifts him up, it puts him in good spirits. First of all, that is an unbelievable accomplishment, even if the person can somewhat come out of his depression because of his faith in Hashem. And you see people doing it, and it's an unbelievable thing. However, if that person gets a phone call and somebody tells him on the line that you remember that lawsuit that we filed on your behalf 15 years ago and it was stuck up us in courts, you finally won it and you're getting $1 million. The ecstasy that he's going to experience, that's ecstasy. That's ecstasy. Okay? So that's what I'm talking about. Hold on, there were Yidden. They say of the story, there's two versions of the story of how Reb Zalman Zezmer came to be a chassid. Reb Zalman Zezmer was one of the Alter Rebbe's greatest chassidim. We all know that Reb Hillel Paritcher was one of the greatest chassidim in the history of chassidus. Reb Hillel Paritcher's teacher was Reb Zalman Zezmer, and he said of art that the distance between me and Zalman Zezmer is the same as the distance between a cat and a human being. And he explained, don't think that I mean to say, just like from a cat to a human being, there's a great distance. So for me to Zalman Zezmer is a great distance. He said, no. Compared to Zalman Zezmer, me and the cat are the same thing. That's what Reb Hillel said about the Zalman Zezmer. So, and imagine the greatness of the Alter Rebbe, of whom Reb Zalman Zezmer was a chassid of. So, how did Reb Zalman Zezmer become a chassid? So there's two versions, but one of the versions of the story is that Reb Binyamin Kletzker, who was, in my humble opinion, a chassid for our times. Why was he a chassid for our times? Because he was a businessman. The greatness of Reb Binyamin Kletzker can hardly be described. If you look in the stories of he's the person who came to the conclusion in Ed Muvade. When you look in the stories of the Fidiker, you could get a glimpse into the greatness of Reb Binyamin Kletzker, but he was a businessman. Reb Hillel Paritcher was a mashpia, was a rav, was Isaac Homler was a rav. I mean, all the Zalman Zezmer. Reb Binyamin Kletzker was a businessman. He was he was a regular, down to earth person. So Reb Zalman Zezmer saw Reb Binyamin Kletzker reading the parsha of Amalek, of Mechias Amalek, Zacher is the Shara Salcha Amalek. Reb Zalman Zezmer saw, and he wasn't a chassid, he saw on Reb Binyamin Kletzker's face such a burning hatred for Amalek as he was reading the parsha that he approached him afterwards and he said, "Tell me, how can you develop such a hatred to Amalek? I want to know where you get this from. Such an authentic and burning hatred, like the real one, like we were describing before, a real, fully developed emotion." And Reb Zalman Zezmer told him, for this you have to go to the Alter Rebbe. So he went to the Alter Rebbe, and that's how he became a chassid. That we don't have in this generation. Can we agree on that? So you would think that what do we have? So our simple actions that we do with our body, we put on tefillin on our body, we give tzedakah with our physical hand. Who do we give the tzedakah to another physical yid? We're not dealing over here with yichudim elyonim. Yeah, we're being miyached, zon, malchus, kutchabrichu, shchinte. We are, but that's not what's in our hearts. But we're doing everything just at the physical level. And you would think that that's on a lower level. The Eibishter accepts it as a second best, as an also ran. After you learn this and many other Mamarim, you begin to understand that you're looking at things completely the opposite. What's closest to the Eibishter is the human body of a Yid. And when the human body of a Yid does a physical mitzvah, that's what's greatest by the Eibishter. The only job of the neshama, so to speak, is to reveal the greatness of the body. Just like the job of Torah is to reveal the greatness of a Yid, the job of a neshama within a Yid himself, the job of a neshama is to reveal the greatness of the Yid's body. That's what's going on over here. And it's very appropriate for just a few days before Rosh Hashanah, because Rosh Hashanah, everyone is Sana Teikev. Should we get into another story? Do another story, and then we'll run through the inside. They say about Reb Hillel Paritcher that he told the story. There's a famous story of the Marami Rottenburg, where he was taken for ransom, and he told his community not to redeem him, because he didn't want it to become a thing that they're going to take the next person and the next great tzaddik or communal leader, and also put him in. So he remained until he passed away. This is the famous Sefer Torah that he wrote. There's a few stories from when he was in the tower.
He got his bones on a chair.
Oh, so that's what we're talking about now. So even when he passed away, they wouldn't let his body out. The Duke or whoever it was wouldn't let his body out and that went on for many years. For many years. One time, there was a very wealthy Yid who heard about the story. I guess it was a little forgotten already, but there was a very wealthy Yid who heard about it. And he went to the Duke or whoever it was, the person in charge, and he said, "How much do you want?" And he told him an amount that was equal to to this person's entire wealth. And he went and he took his entire wealth and he gave it to him. I guess it was okay already to give it because they wouldn't do it again. First he had to feed 40 years, so they wouldn't do it again. It's not worth it. You're gonna take something now to wait for your money for 40 years. I guess it was okay already to pay to have him released. So he gave.
No, they wanted to give him a kavura.
They wanted to give him a kavura. Yeah. So, and he did it. He gave him his full wealth, and that was the night before Yom Kippur, I believe. And that night, the Maram Rottenburg appeared to this wealthy person, once wealthy individual, in a dream. And he told him, "Thank you very much. And as a reward for what you did, you have two options. You can either get back all of your wealth." He may have even told him, "and have even greater wealth than what you had before, because otherwise, how's it a reward? Or you can be with me in Gan Eden. However, if you choose the second option, to be with me in Gan Eden, you're going to pass away the next day. So if you choose that, say your goodbyes to your family, finish your business, whatever it is, your tzava, whatever it is, because you're going to pass away the next day." And he chose. He was a yid of a who was in touch with truth, and he chose l'chora, and he chose to be imam b'mchitzasi with the Maram Rottenburg. The Hill Parsha tells his students this story, and he asks his students, "Tell me, did he choose well?" So they told him, "Yeah, of course. What's the question?" The little Parsha said, "Shoite." He was a shoite. One time putting on tefillin. One time putting on tefillin is greater than anything in Gan Eden. If he would have chosen to have his wealth, could you imagine how many mitzvahs he was able to do with his wealth? He was a shaita. So this is when the Sana Takef. Evan says, I see you disagree a little bit. Give me a second. When the Sana Takef, Evan says, why is it that we see that you didn't cry by Onesana Takef? Why do you didn't cry by Onesana Takef? I heard this chassid who was in Brunois, and he was asked to help Rabbi Solnech Belnitzky. Rabbi Solnech Belnitzky was a great chassid from the generation of the Frierdiker Rebbe. And he lived till 100 years old, or even more than 100 years old, and he spent his last 40 years or 35 years was in Brunois, in the yeshiva over there. A very great chassid. So he was very old at the time, and there was a bacher who was learning in the yeshiva, and he was asked to sit next to him, to help him stand up by the parts that you have to stand up, because it was very hard for him already even just to stand up. He says he noticed that when does everybody cry? When do most people cry? By in Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur davening. By Onesana Takef, and when you say Mila Chaim and Mila Maves, and you ask the Eivishter to Navinu Malkein, you ask the Eivishter to give us everything that we need. He says Rebbe didn't cry by those parts at all. When did he cry? That the Eivishter's fear should be felt in this world by all of those parts. He would burst out in uncontrollable crying. His body was shaking, this Bachar describes. His entire body was shaking and tears were streaming down his eyes. However, we see, what do most Yidden do? You cry by Onesana Takef. You cry by Onesana Takef. Says the Rebbe in a sikh, and it's a mugad sikh. So everything in it is exact. The message that we're reading over there is exactly what the Rebbe told us. Onesana Takef. You know why Yidden cry by Onesana Takef? Because if it's going to be death by fire or by water or by hunger or all the other things, I'm not going to be able to do mitzvahs anymore. And that's why I'm crying. It seems like, Begilui, you ask me, why am I crying? I'm crying because the candies, they're very important to me. Says the Rebbe, that's only b'chitzeni. It's b'pnimis. The reason you're crying is because that's what really matters. What really matters is that you should be able to be alive and do the Eibishter's mitzvahs, and that touches on the deepest part of the Yid, even l'chora deeper than Ubechem Teim Tachtecha, because this is the job that the Eibishter wants you to do, and you need life in this world to be able to do that job. So that's the Aved of a Yid's body in this world. So l'chora, it's very appropriate that we're finishing this time just a few days before Rosh Hashanah, where the Rebbe describes the greatness of the body of a Yid, and in those lines, the Eibishter should fulfill what it says in his Torah, and give the Yidden a good year, begashmius, pashat, for their bodies, for their physical life. So let's get going to the theme of the Maimer. Eis Zayin. V'zeu Kumi Eidi Kiva Orech, and this is now the meaning of the pasuk Kumi Eidi Kiva Orech, which is the Rebbe's Dibra Maschil. Until now, we were discussing the pasuk of Kimcham Karchaim Beirchin Nira Eir. Now the Rebbe is finally coming back to the pasuk that he started his Maimer with, which is Kumi Eidi Kiva Orech. Arise and shine, because your light has come. And they observed in the beginning of the Maimer that Eidi and Orech are two different madrigas. There's two things over there. There's Eidi and Orech. And the Rebbe says, the Shnei Yanim Elu, Eidi ve'Orech, hem dugma Shneiha in Yanim de ba'Orecha nira Eir. These two ideas of Eidi and Orech are similar to the two ideas of ba'Orecha nira Eir that we explained Kanal B'tchilas HaMaimer, and continue to explain throughout the end of the rest of the Maimer. Orecha ha'Oir shel Yisrael atzmam. No, I'm sorry. Which, how do we explain Ba'orecha Nira Eir? That Ba'orecha is the Eir of Torah, and Nira Eir is the Eir of a Yid, and the Eir of Torah brings out the Eir of a Yid. That's how we just explain that. So there it says like this: Eircha, in the pasuk of Kumi Eidi Kiva Orech, Orech ha'Oir shel Yisrael atzmam hu al derech Ba'orecha Eir shelcha. Orech corresponds to the level of Eircha, which was Torah. So Orech by Yid corresponds to that level. V'Kumi Eidi ha'Oir shel Yisrael me'inim, the light that the Yidden bring themselves, who al derech ha'Oir shel nira al yidei Orech shel amayla me'Orecha, is al derech the Eir that is seen through Orcha, which is even higher than Orcha. So just like the light of Eir is higher than Orcha, that the light of the Yid is higher than the light of Torah, it's just that the light of Torah reveals to us the light of a Yid, so too within a Yid, you also have two levels of light. You have Orech and Eiri. And the level of Orech merely reveals the higher level of Eiri. What are these two levels? Being in Neshama v'guf. And the Makom Achid over here is Sichus of the Rebbe. So the Rebbe talks in this union very much. What's explained in other areas when you get to the Yid's Neshama and the Yid's body. When it comes to Neshamas, we say, what is the greatness of a Neshama? What is a Neshama? It is the Eibishter's child. It is like a natural love, which is similar to the natural love that a father has to his child. Excuse me. So this was a little unexpected. Usually, what do we say in Chassidus when we say that Yidden are the Eibishter's children, and therefore their connection is a iskashas atzmis. It is a connection of the essence. That's not his focus over here. He says that is true. However, still it's natural. For a father to love his son is natural. Why? Because it's his son. A father doesn't have to do anything to love his son. He loves him because he is my son. What's the focus over here? That the love comes in a certain description, in a certain form. There's a father, there's a child. Because he is a child, therefore the father has no choice but to love his son. So from where does this love come from? It comes from this whole form, from this whole tzir, from this whole description of father and son. It doesn't come from the core of the father. Usually it's explained that this is the essence of the father because it is way beyond any of the levels. It's beyond. The father doesn't love his son because of an emotional level. He doesn't love his son because of an intellectual understanding. He doesn't love his son because he wants to love his son. It reaches way beyond deeper any than those places. There's something of the essence of the father. And when you're talking in general, that's where we leave it, and that's what's typically described in Chassidus. However, in some places in Chassidus, like in this manual, we say, hold on, 1 second. True, the father loves the child with his whole essence. But why? Because it's his child.
It's an extension of the father.
Because it's an extension of the father. Good.
When
so
you
the
look at
child.
your son, you're looking at a piece of yourself.
Good. So the child has a certain form. He takes on a certain shape, a certain idea, a certain concept. And therefore, naturally, you love the extension of yourself. But it is because what the son is, not because of the core of the person.
His essence.
It's not because of the essence of the father. It's not that the essence of the
Or
father.
son.
Getting complicated. We'll leave it at that. Let's leave it at that. And then we'll get a little more explanation over here. Hainu. Sheshenish avazu. Let's hear the way the Rebbe describes it, and then we'll come back maybe to what you were saying. Sheshenish avazu hinu nadreges sheshayechas sham tfias smakim dahanehav. This love comes from a place where the child exists. If the child didn't exist, if it was somebody else's child, for example, he wouldn't love him. So it's because of the existence of the child that he loves him. It's not because of the core of the father itself. It is not from the essence of the father itself, himself. And that's the love and the closeness of the Eibshter to our neshama. If we're going to talk about the love that the Eibshter has to the body of a Yid, and the connection that the Eibshter has to the body of a Yid, it's not because the body of a Yid has anything special in it. It doesn't even have the deepest mila of a child. No, the body is similar to the body of a guy. Why does the Eibshter love the body of a Yid? Not because it's natural for the Eibshter to love the body of a Yid, just like it's natural for a father to love his child, but it's rather because that's what the Eibshter himself chose to do, in his own free will. In other words, it came from his essence. I am choosing to love a Yid, the body of a Yid, and to connect to the body of a Yid, not because I'm compelled to, not because of anything specific about the body of a Yid, but because of me, because I decided to. So it comes from the deepest place in the Eibshter Kiviyachal. This free choice that is not compelled by anything, not even by a nature, that comes from the essence of the Eibshter. In other words, if we will take it back to the person, so we all understand that there are external levels to a person, like we mentioned before. There's what I love because of my emotional state or my emotional feelings. There's what I love, which goes a little deeper, or whatever, we'll just, over here, we'll call it deeper, because of what I understand. Even deeper than that is there's what I love because of what I want. But we understand that all of these things are relatively external to a person's essence. Vaharaya, a friend I could love because of my emotional state, or because of my understanding, or because of my will. However, a child I love much more than a friend, and it's not because of any reason. If a father has 2 children or many children, and there are some of them who are going in a better way, and some of them, Rahman al-Islam, going in a not such a good way, some of them more similar to his nature, some of them know how to entertain him, some of them know how to show him love, and some of them don't know how to show him love, and some of them are not so close to his nature, don't know how to entertain him. He loves all of them just the same. Because this has nothing to do with any of the externalities of the father. It has to do all with the essence of the father. Because the child, like I said before, is an extension of the father. However, what drives this love? He is my son. Not my true essence drives it. The fact that he is my son, that's what compels this love. So the love that's compelled, the love that's drawn out, is drawn out from the deepest part of the father, from his essence. But it's because of what the child is, because of he is my extension, he is my child. If that's the case, that it comes in a certain description, in a certain form, because of a certain definition, so it's not me, myself, it's the definition of the thing that forces it. The definition of the fact that he's my son, therefore he is my extension, therefore I love him to the core of what I am. Fine, true, granted. But it is because of his definition, so it's not to the deepest part of you. What is to the deepest part of a person? When it's all about the person, it's his own free choice. It's not because of the other thing. He, because of himself, decided to choose something. Not because of what the other thing is. 2 things are completely equal, and he chose one of them. Because they're completely equal, so it's not because of the thing itself. It's because of this is what I decided to do. Al derech zeh, the connection of a Yid of the Eibshter to the body of a Yid. The Eibshter chose the bodies of Yidden, not because of anything special in them, but rather because he wanted to. And therefore, that comes from an even deeper place in the Eibshter, because it comes from the atzmus of the Eibshter himself. However, so if so, why don't we see that? So he says, the neshama, that in a revealed way, you can see how it's the Eibshter's child. The Mila of the body that we just described over here, that it's connected to the essence of the Eibishter because the Eibishter chose it with his own free will. You don't see it. What did the Eibishter do to the body even more than to the neshama? The Eibishter just made it, kept it a physical body. So therefore, we now need this interplay of validation. Through this, that the neshama works with the body. Misgala by ma'alosai, the neshama now reveals the mila of the body. That what? That the body has within it. The body has within it the choice of the essence of the Eibishter himself. That in him is his choice. So just like the Torah works with the Yid in general to reveal within him his greatness, so too the body is greater than the Yid. It's just than the neshama. It's just that the Yid's neshama works with his body to reveal the greatness of the body. But what's the main thing over here? What's the greatest thing? What's the most important thing? What's the most cherished thing by the Eibishter? Is the body. What's the most important thing to take care of? Is the body. What should we take the most pride of? Those simple mitzvahs that we do, the simple donning of the tefillin, the simple coming to shul, the simple putting in of the tzedakah. That's the main thing. We have to have fear and love of the Eibishter because that's what the Eibishter wants. Fine, we'll do our best with it. But what's the main thing? The main thing is what happens, what we do with our physical body, because that's what's connected to the Eibishter. According to this, we could explain. The Rebbe now wraps it all up. I already started explaining it before, but now the Rebbe explicitly states it, that the explanation of Kumi Eidi Kivayrich, what are these two madregas of Eidi and Eirich? She'eirich hu Eidi da neshama. That's the light of the neshama. The Kumi Eidi, what's Kumi Eidi? That comes about because of Orech, through the light of the neshama, which the neshama carries within it in a revealed way. Its connection to the Eibishter, which is Orech, the neshama has to come and do work with a person's body, with the Yid, with the physical Yid in this world. And to bring light to him. What does it mean to bring light to him? To reveal within him his close connection to the Eibishter, his oneness with Eibishter. And through this, we get an even greater light than the light of the neshama. Just like we explained, that the level of the Yid, which is revealed through the light of Torah, that is even greater than the light of Torah itself. So too, the light of the body of a Yid, that's revealed through the light of the neshama of a Yid, is even greater than the light of the neshama of a Yid. So now we have a little bit of a better appreciation how to view ourselves and how to view our fellow Yidden. And like I said, the Yid, that's the human being, with everything that comes with what it means to be a human being. Who does not have flaws? Who doesn't have faults? If you're a human being, it's part of the state of a human being. This is the human being that the Rebbe is talking about. And that is the thing that is the most cherished and treasured by the Eibishter, the body of the Yid. It is only our job to reveal it, to show it. Which, like we'll see in the continuation of the Maimer, will be completed when Mashiach comes, but we could do a little bit of it now also. So let's finish the Maimer. Now, the Frierdiker Rebbe in his Maimer of Kimcham Kerchaim explains, was Managolus. When do the Yidden tell the Eibishter Kimcham Kerchaim, with you is the source of life? In your light we will see light. The Yidden tells us to the Eibishter in the time of Golus. Why is it dafka in the time of Golus that the Yidden are calling out to the Eibishter and crying out to the Eibishter that we want to be with you? You are the source of light of life, and we want to be with you. We want to see your light. Why do they do dafka in the time of Golus? In the time of Golus, the thirst to godliness, the thirst to have closeness to the Eibishter is greater than the thirst that's in the time of the Beis HaMikdash. Uketeres of Baal Shem Tov, like we all know the famous Torah of the Baal Shem Tov, who's Baal Yom Haledes, the Chaya Elul, the one whose birthday is on Chaya Elul, on a pasuk Tzama Lecha Nafshi in Tehillim. David HaMelech says, Tzama Lecha Nafshi Kama Lecha B'sari. My soul thirsts for you. My flesh yearns for you. The Eretz Tziva Ayif Bli Mayim. In a desolate and dry land, without any water to satisfy this thirst. That's how much my soul and my body thirst and yearn for you. And the next pasuk says, "Kein b'kedesh chazisicha," which the simple types, the literal types, and "Kein b'kedesh chazisicha" is to say, true. There was a time when I was in a place of holiness, and there I saw you. But now I find myself in a place of Eretz Tziyah v'Ayif, a dry and thirsty place without any water. How does the Baal Shem Tov explain it? He explains it like this: the tzama l'cha nafshi, the thirst that the nefesh, that the soul, and so to the yearning of the body, of the flesh, to the Eibishter who bisman hagalus, that is in the time of galus be'etzivayim limayim, Baal zen nemar, and regarding this thirst of the body and of the soul to the Eibishter that is experienced exclusively in the time of distance, in the time of galus. On this, David HaMelech says, Kain b'kedesh chazisicha, Kain, not true I saw you in a place of holiness, but halavai b'kedesh chazisicha. Cain, Halavai, when I was in a place of holiness, when I was in a place of closeness to you, Abishter, that I experienced this strong urge and urgency and desire to be close to you. In other words, just like when a person is full, he doesn't feel any interest in food, he has no need for food. It's only when he gets hungry and he's fasting. Never mind if he's traveling and lost somewhere in a desert and he's out of provisions, he's out of supplies, and he's feeling his thirst like crazy. So over there, he feels how much water is precious to him and how much food is precious to him. Says David HaMelech in Tehillim, that when I was Bakodesh, when I was close to you, Eibishter, in the Beis HaMikdash or in the Mishkan, so I was experiencing your light. But my thirst to you wasn't great because I was satisfied. I was like a person who's full and has water. Now, when I had to run away, now when Yidden are in Golus and we're distant from the Eibishter, we experience a thirst that was never experienced by the Yidden who experienced the entire greatness of the Beis HaMikdash. It's called the greatness of the Beis HaMikdash. This thirst that we have now in Golus was never experienced then. This man HaGolus, and then this the Fidik Rebbe says, and at the time of Golus, Eimeres Knesset Salah Kadosh Baruch Hu, the Yidden say to the Eibishter, Ribono Shel Olam Kilchem Kerchaim Berich Nira'ir, mit dir Ribono Shel Olam is der Kval von Leben. This is the lashon of the Fidik Rebbe. With you, Master of the world, is the well of life. Mit dein Lichtigkeit sehen wir Licht. With your light, we see light. In other words, we are yearning for the Eibishter's light and for the Eibishter's life. Now, the Rebbe connected this pasuk to Kumi Yoedi Kiva Orech. Kimchem Kerchaim, the Rebbe says connected to Kumi Yoedi Kiva Orech. So just like the pasuk of Kimchem Kerchaim Orech applies when in the time of Golus, so too this idea that the Yid's body is the closest to the Eibishter applies not only in the times of Mashiach, it applies also now in the time of Golus. In other words, when they ever finished saying Zion, you could have come with a lumdus and say, yeah, it's true that the body of a Yid is the closest thing to the Eibishter, but when is that going to be? That is going to be in the time of Mashiach. Like the Ramban says, and like Hasidus Paskins, according to the Ramban, that the highest level of Yemei Mashiach is going to be the bodies of the Yid in this world. So you'll say that's going to be the time of Mashiach. So true. It's true, says the Rebbe, that it's going to be fully revealed in the time of Mashiach. However, this Aveda, this work, and this concept that the body of a Yid is the greatest thing is also true and applicable now the way we live as Yidden in Golus, with everything that means. It applies also now to the Yidden now living in Golus before the revelation of Mashiach. So this is what Rebbe is going to say now. That the pasuk of Kumi 80 is connected to the pasuk of Ba'er Chanira Eir Yeshleimar Shagam Maimer Hakadosh Baruch Hu L'Knesset Yisrael. The Eibishter statement to the Yidden of Kumi 80 Kiva Eirech Hagam Shemi Pashtus Halashain Kiva Mashma Shekvar Kiva Eirech Shekvar Mashma Shmedaber Bizman Hagula. Even though the Pashtus, the literal translation meaning of the pasuk, seemingly is talking about the time of Mashiach. That's when the Eibishter is going to tell the Yidden, let the light of your body shine. Nevertheless, Hugam Bizman HaGolus, it also applies in the time of Golus, just like the pasuk Kimchem Kerchaim Berich Nira'ir applies in the time of Golus. Hainu, meaning Shegam Bizman HaGolus, also in the times of Golus. Ubefrat B'yamim Achareinim Shel Golus. And especially in the final days of Golus. Now, you're going to say, okay, it also applies in Golus. Maybe it applies in Golus in the generation of Rabbi Akiva and of Nachum Ish Gamzu, the Tanoim, who were just barely in Golus. They experienced the Beis HaMikdash, some of them, and they were still close. They knew people who lived who saw the Beis HaMikdash. That's Golus, and that's when the great Yidden of Golus lived. It says no. There it says Befrat B'yamim Achareinim Da Golus. And especially in the final days of Golus. In other words, us Yidden living over here in the world the way we are. There could be and there must be this idea of Kumi Eiri Kiva Orech, that the light of the body becomes revealed through the neshama. Heim b'negel oir haneshama, sai b'negel to the light of the Yid's neshama Orech. V'heim b'negel is esha neshama miras aguf Kumi Eiri. and so to benegeh to the light of the Yid's body, that it brings out the light of the Yid's, the neshama brings out the light of the Yid's body. What does this mean to the best? The way I could explain it to myself is Pasha, for example, learning a maimer like this maimer. You're learning a maimer like this maimer, where the Rebbe explains to you the greatness of the body of a Yid. So now when you're walking down the street and you Pasha, you're walking this way, another Yid is walking this way, even if you don't know him and you couldn't catch his eye to say, to acknowledge his existence, but you feel to yourself, whoa, what just walked by me? The body of a Yid just walked by me. Something, a Yid, in other words. A piece of the divine just walked right by me. And that's truly what it is. And so with this, we reveal a little bit the greatness of the body of the way you look at another Yid, and also the way you look at yourself. When you have a little bit more, when it's a little bit more precious by you, the simple putting on of tefillin, or the simple putting a penny in the pushka, or touching the mezuzah as you pass the room, or helping another Yid physically, in a physical sense, when you do all of those things and you feel what the Rebbe discussed over here in the Maimon, just how precious it is, just how treasured it is. So in that way, even in the time of Golus, even though it's not obvious to us, I don't see it with my physical eyes, but I start to experience it a little bit. And that's how I understand what that means, that it already applies in the time of Golus, so we could already start implementing this idea. I'm feeling this idea of the greatness of the body of a Yid, of a physical human being, the Yid sitting in front of you. And through our work in the time of Golus, in other words, in these last moments of Golus that we're experiencing right now, especially if we do the Aveda of Kumi Edi Kiva Erech, that we reveal the light of the physical Yid, the light of the body of the Yid who's sitting in front of us. We hasten and we bring closer the Gula Hasidah Mashiach Tzidkenu, which then we will see with our physical eyes. We'll be able to see. We'll look at another Yid. We'll see how he is connected with the essence of the Eibishter. And it will come in a quick way, like the completion of the Haftarah of the Shabbos, in which the Rebbe said this Maimer, which it says Achishena. The word is that the Eibishter will bring the Gula Hamitzvah Shlema in earlier than its time, in a quick way. May it be immediately now, like the Rebbe told us that we are already in the process of Mashiach, and now we just have to open our eyes to see Mashiach. And Ot is the Rebbe, and that right here taking us out of Golus, may it be right now.
Oh, amen.
I mean, a good to you.
Now, tomorrow, put out feeling is going to have a different definition.
I'm talking like in Maimons, then go around this. So everybody should be inscribed in the book of life, in a good book. I'm trying to tell you, Mesukah, a good and sweet year. Like they ever like to explain the Mesukah, we say sweet. Why? Because sweet means in the physical sense. Everything else could mean something spiritual. Sweet means physically sweet, it's physically good. Good to you.